And welcome back to Morning Shot. Hello, everybody. It's me again. I got with me today Zaahir from the Gun Owners of South Africa. He's here to talk to us about the Firearms Amendment Act, which the government gazetted last year. And he's here to give us a quick update as to what's going on. We thought this a rather interesting topic to cover, especially in line with the fact that Justin Trudeau's government has now banned handguns, or says that they are pushing forward legislation to ban the use of handguns in Canada, and obviously Joe Biden has been on a roll of recent attacking the Second Amendment. So, bringing it home and looking at gun rights in South Africa, we thought we'd speak to the experts and get an opinion from him as to what's happening at the moment. Hello, Zaahir.
Hi, how's it?
How are you doing?
Welcome to the audience. Good. Yourself?
Not too bad, not too bad. Do you want to tell our audience who you are and your role at GOSA?
Yeah, my name is Zaahir. I'm a director of GOSA. GOSA being a public benefit NPC, non-profit organization. I'm one of the three directors, and I'm also a page admin for the GOSA Facebook group. And that's what I do all day, every day, is admin the page. Obviously, as a director, I'm also involved in the running of the organization.
Yeah, I mean, I see you on the Facebook page quite a lot, commenting to stupid questions that you get asked around gun law in South Africa.
Yeah, look, no question is stupid, especially when it comes to firearms and firearms law in South Africa. So there's a lot of people that let's say they do the training, but they don't sometimes understand, what's in the legislation, and they need it explained. So yeah, we have to be there. We're there for everybody.
So what's the current state of play with the Firearms Amendment Act? Obviously, the government gazetted it last year. DRSA ran a campaign. The campaign almost crashed the government servers. Luckily, DRSA kept a copy of all the submissions, and the overwhelming response from the public was to go do one. So what's the current state of play?
Okay, currently, I mean, we had a successful DSA campaign. I think it was 100,000 plus comments, 90 odd, closer to 98% or so were opposed to the amendments. So what happened was, once the commentary period had ended, they obviously have to take this to the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee. We normally just call it the PPC on policing. And they will then decide whether the legislation goes forward to the next step, which would to have put before Parliament and the National Council of Provinces before it gets signed into law by the state president. So what happened at the PPC was, they said, well, sorry, there's too much opposition to this bill, and there was also not the proper procedure in the drafting of this legislation was not followed. Proper procedure is that there should have been stakeholder input, and there was no stakeholder input. So basically what they did was they shelved the bill for now, told them to go back and follow the proper procedure. So currently that happened, if I remember correctly, around about October last year. And mid-November, GOSA got news that a webinar was being organized by the CSP, which is the Civilian Secretariat for Policing. So they basically civilian oversight of the SAPS, and they advise the Minister of Police on policing matters. So they organized this webinar and invited certain stakeholders. GOSA was not invited. We managed to get wind of this, and we basically forced ourselves into this whole procedure, and then we actually managed to shut the webinar down, because we were notified like the Sunday, and the webinar was supposed to take place on the Wednesday. And our comments were that, this is not, you're not inviting everybody. Who's invited? Who's not invited? I mean, you had something like South African Football Association invited. So I would like to know where they are considered as stakeholders in firearms, unless the game of football is being changed and becoming a
It
bit
could
more
be far more
dangerous.
interesting that way.
It could be, it's possible. So they were
Bafana
invited.
might
They are
win
stake.
something.
Oh well, maybe. I mean, that's South Africa. So we wanted to know, and then what we also subsequently did was we submitted a PIA request, a promotion to access to information, and up until today, they have not honored the PIA request. So tomorrow, well, it's Monday now, so I think by the time the viewers see this, which would be Tuesday tomorrow, is when we are actually meeting with them. Face to face. They have met with various other stakeholders in the firearms fraternity, and we have received a little bit of feedback from them, and we know more or less what they're looking at. So we're going there to say our piece, and ask them where's the PIA request, because by law you're supposed to give us this information, and we cannot give proper input on this bill if we do not have this information. So we believe there's maybe things that's being hidden that they don't want to have come to light, and we're there to dig it out.
So when you say you know more or less what they're gonna what their angle is, what is their angle? What are they aiming for?
Well, they're aiming for input on the bill, on the mechanics of the bill. Now, our point position is we cannot give that input on the mechanics of the bill if we do not know who was involved in drafting the bill in the first place, right? So the idea is obviously personally and from the team that is representing GOSA tomorrow at the meeting, we're looking at it as basically just a tick the box exercise for them, so that they can go back and say, yes, here we see we did what you asked us to do, and here's the bill. I feel that they're not going to do anything different to the bill. They're just going to we'll put the bill back down and say, here's the bill, here's what we've done, like you asked us, we've ticked all the boxes, so please, just get it going. So that and so far, everybody that has met with him, let's put it that way, have rejected the bill in its entirety. I mean, so that is something they can tick all the boxes they want. The response is the same: we do not want this bill, and that's across the board from everybody, because it's far-reaching and it affects everybody in different ways.
So what exactly does the bill say that everybody's rejecting and is upset about?
Well, firstly, they're changing the preamble of the bill. The preamble in its current form makes provision for the right to life and the right to integrity and the right to protection of the citizens. They're changing all of that. I can't remember the exact wording, but it's taking out that right to life, that protecting of the citizens, and all of those things. So there's already
that's the idea of linking firearm ownership to the ability to protect your life.
To protect your life. So they already you are going against constitutional right to life. So the next thing that they're looking at is obviously removal of the what we call Section 13, which is a firearm for self-defense as a reason. So they're wanting to take away your right to self-defense. Yes, we have the right to life. You have the right to defend yourself. We make the logical leap to say that what is the most effective means of defending yourself currently? And if you look at the context of our violent society, violent South Africa, it's a firearm, right? So they're looking to take that away. They're looking to remove Section 15, which is occasional sport and hunting. I think there's some adjustments there. Section 16, which is dedicated sport and hunting, also some adjustments there, reducing the number of firearms to something like 6, 2 handguns, 2 semi-autos, 2 manual. I mean,
and there was something like around ammo numbers is like down to 100 cartridges or something.
Yes, 100 rounds of ammunition for a dedicated sports person. I mean, that is not even, you're not even starting your day. I mean, 3 stages and you're already gone through 100 rounds and you've got what?
A standard AR-15 carries what, 30 rounds, so you're talking like 3 mags and you're
Exactly.
done. Time to go home.
Yeah,
Like,
it's time to
wouldn't
go
take very
home.
long, would it?
And I mean, if you're talking about shooting a national match or even a provincial match of 10 stages or 23 stages on a national match, that's 2 days. And if you consider that some guys shoot, maybe that it's a 3 day match, 2 days for handgun, and they may be shooting PCC the third day. 100 rounds doesn't do much. And then they're looking at taking away reloading like we normally do. I mean, guys reload their own ammunition. They're going to have some fun on the range. Sportsman reloads his ammunition because he needs X amount, 200-300 rounds for a match. Hunters do the same thing. Cost effectiveness. Any person involved in any type of sport shooting or even any form of training, it's much more cost effective to reload your own ammunition. Then there's something about you need a permit to transport your own firearm to the range. So effectively that cancels out carrying your firearm. So if you want to go on a Saturday, you need to go and get a permit at your local SAPS um, to take that firearm from your safe, your property. Okay, it's your property. Take that from your safe to go to your local range and back again. So we're looking at property ownership rights that's also being impacted. And the funny thing is, the Fidelity Concord order came out about, where are we now? About a week ago, a week and a half ago. And in there, the Concord makes a separation between ownership and possession. So ownership is when you purchase that firearm at the dealer. It's yours. The only thing is you cannot possess it until you have a license. So even if your license expires or
It's still yours.
it's still yours.
There's no gun buyback or confiscation.
Yeah, or confiscation. I mean, that can't happen. I mean, especially the guys that were, let's call it what it is. They were conned into surrendering their firearms during amnesty, especially the ones that sent it
All
for
of which have
destruction.
disappeared back on the streets in illegal hands.
Exactly. I mean, this is a repeat of the Prinsloo issue a few years ago. I mean, it's not, and this is not. Look, we said this at the beginning of amnesty.
Just for the purposes of YouTube, just so we don't get a strike on this. There was a book written on this called "Give Us More Guns," and there was a whole book about how
there was a whole book on this.
Yeah,
and funnily enough, from the little excerpts of the book that I saw, there was one excerpt where he was interviewing one of the Stachy brothers, and he was saying, you know what, it was easier for us to rob the police base, which was, I think, mentioned the one in Fori, than to go and house to house, break in, hoping to find firearms. At least we go to the police base, you're going to walk away with an arsenal. How many homes would they have to break into to hopefully find a firearm in a neighborhood? So when they come out and say it's civilian firearms that is feeding the illegal pool, it is disingenuous.
So from your feeling, what's the likelihood that this amendment will succeed, and we're going to have self-defense rights stripped in South Africa, and this bill to kind of contend with? What's the likely scenario that's the reality?
I think it's a low likelihood, especially with the amount of opposition to the bill. From the civilian,
the ANC is kind of famous of just pushing these things through Parliament with their majority.
Yes, that is there. But you know what? You've got the party, and then you've got the party members who are firearm owners. You have party members high up who are firearm owners. So there's a bit of a hypocrisy going on, right? You've got the Latulia House Armory, firearms that were given to the ANC by the old
By the
national
Russians.
government, licensed in their name. I mean, this is the only political party that has firearms licensed in their name
Yeah. Well, because of
in Litulia
MK
House.
vets. Because of the MK
Yeah,
vets and the Russians as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and we're not even going into the what 100 tons of small arms and explosives smuggled into South Africa during the struggle years, which have now been distributed across the country, and they don't know where they are.
Yeah.
So there are caches of firearms sitting all over the country, which they don't know where it is. I mean, that doesn't sound right. I mean, how can you just lose track of firearm caches which you smuggled in to your people, and now suddenly it's gone? So where's that guns coming out? Is it coming? Is it sitting there? Are these people making use of it? The cash in transits. If you look at the firearms used in those cash in transits, I mean, if I thinking back to articles I read about cash in transit, guys, it's like you go to somebody. Here's a couple of AKs. It's so much for the day, and they're getting hired out. So these caches are probably still under the control of cells
Mm.
who have now trying to make an income for themselves because they've been marginalized from the whole process. So they're hiring these guns out with ammunition.
Mm.
Yes, you're gonna see the odd M4 type rifle popping up in a cash in transit recovered from it. Most likely that is from a security company, which they probably hit the previous week and then just took the firearms off the guards.
Mm.
So those are the types of firearms that the guards would carry. And security firearms are lumped in with civilian, and they are considered as civilian firearm losses.
Mm.
So there we're looking at a skewing of the numbers because the claim is that it's civilian firearms that's fueling the illegal pool.
Mm.
Now, my firearms are locked up. I know my friends' firearms are locked up. I know thousands, hundreds of thousands of civilian firearm owners who lock up their firearms. So how are you suddenly having this influx
Well, they're claiming it's
of,
farm murders. They're
they're
saying
claiming that,
farm murders or farmers are losing their firearms, and people are. They're saying when they break into your house, people are using your gun on you, and that's how they're stealing it. It's the usual kind of trope, isn't it?
yeah, it's the usual nonsense. I mean, look, I can understand that maybe you get caught off guard.
Mm.
Right? It happens to all of us. I mean, we're human. We're not super Rambo operator terminators. We go to sleep. We get caught off guard. I mean, you get tortured. Your wife gets tortured. You're gonna give up. You're
Mm.
gonna give up. Give them what they want.
Yeah.
So yes, I can agree that it's there. But what is being pushed is that we are irresponsible.
Yeah.
The
That's right.
impression that they're trying to create is that we are irresponsible and we're losing our firearms left, right, and center.
And wouldn't
Um,
we all just be safer if
it's
only Sandu FF or Sandu the army and SAPS
mm,
had firearms? That's what they tell us, right?
exactly that's what they're telling us.
Mm.
But guess what? All the firearms, 170 odd, 170, 75 firearms stolen out of Northwood Police Station.
Mm.
Evidence bags just left on the floor,
Mm.
and these guns are out.
Mm.
Zondo Commission, SEA Security, State Security Agency. Yeah, no, we gave X amount of firearms to people. Yeah, we don't know where it is now. We
Mm.
don't know who the people are. So who's providing the firearms to these people?
Mm.
It's the state. I mean, I'm not even gonna. We're not even gonna touch on Prinsloo. 2,400 firearms taken. Oh, sorry, come on. Taken from the Central Armory, smuggled down to the Cape Flats. 1,100 or in that region, positively linked to shootings on the Cape Flats.
Mm.
There's a video that I saw going around of a while back, an interview with one of these gangsters, ex-gangster or retired gangster or something like that, saying that, every month there's a guy coming onto the flats with about 400 firearms, and he's selling them to the gangs, not just to one gang. He's selling to everybody. So he's arming everybody. It's Z88s, and they are cut in the same manner, meaning the serial number is removed in exactly the same manner. So that's coming from one source. Who uses Z88s primarily? The SAPS. So who is actually the provider of arms to gangsters?
Yeah, probably
not civilians.
Everybody knows SAPS and the
SAPS
army.
and the SANF and the army.
I think when the army went into Durban, there was a big scandal that they had lost a load of guns on the back of lorries, where the lorries were kind of left there. And whilst they went into the KFC, they left all the guns on the back. They came back, the guns were gone. There were loads of those cases. I mean, it's interesting to see a lot of this. I mean, who do you think's funding all of this? Because obviously in South Africa, we see a lot of gun-free South Africa. But they got like 12 members. So who's funding
something
all this
like that? Yeah, well, I think Paratus did a little bit of a deep dive into their funding. And it was interesting to note that George Soros Open Source Foundation or something came up as one of the funders. So what we have here is a foreign non-state actor interfering, this is my take, interfering in the internal matters of a sovereign nation. So by definition, that's terrorism. Funding. Whether you don't have to actively, explode bombs and shit and do all of that stuff around, but you providing the funding. And they providing the funding to GFSA who's got this unprecedented access, which is another thing. How the hell do they have the access they have
to the
ministers and to the CSP and to whoever's up there in charge? So they've got this access. They're being funded by foreigners. So, they may not be doing violent acts, but they are definitely acting against the interests of South Africa, South African citizens.
But I think we're seeing this all over the world. I mean, obviously, there's all the stuff that I'm not going to call it conspiracy theories, because every time somebody calls it a conspiracy theory, it turns out to be true. So let's just say there's the rumors, the rumors of the WEF obviously being pushed by Klaus Schwab's and kind of his influence on foreign policies. I mean, he warned at Davos this year. He warned countries not to put their national interests first. They should put the globalist agenda first. So it does seem to be there's a lot of like European countries still pushing a globalist agenda, which this is the only time I'm ever going to agree with Julius Malema, but it does seem like there is still a degree of colonialism occurring, from the European nations. And it's kind of like, I read an article the other day, and they said Europe is a dying nation, so why are we following their policies? I mean, we're following policies from a dying nation. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Exactly. I mean, even if you look at Europe, I mean, the Czech Republic, it's like standing out there and saying, you know what? President was asked the question, what do we do about terror? So he said, well, shoot him yourself. And they've just got their own Second Amendment, which is against the EU EU policy.
They were heavily criticized for that by the EU, who doesn't like to see small arms.
Exactly. And I think even Switzerland is under a bit of pressure. I mean, we know Switzerland. I mean, these are the poster child for pro-gun rights. I mean, for gun ownership. I mean, yes, these guys, they walk around and it's not a problem. They'll go to a shoot, and the guys are drinking and they're shooting firearms at the same time. It's a bit funny to see, that. But I mean, you have like 1,000 people pitch up for a match, and they rock up there with everything from World War II rifles up onto the latest model Swiss Army issue. I mean, and what's the murder rate there, and the gun violence rate? Something like 0 point something.
But I think
statistically,
Yeah, I think this got mentioned in the US the other day, and that is that there isn't a gun problem in the US because a lot of people are saying, how come we're now seeing mass shooting? And there has actually been
Mm.
some people come up of recent saying, well, potentially the reason we're seeing mass shooting isn't because there's more gun ownership, it's actually changing culture. And I suppose the Swiss culture hasn't really changed that much, which
They
is why
haven't
it's
really
still
changed.
safe.
I mean, which is why they still got that, that. I mean, I saw a video. The guys are shooting on the shooting range,
Mm,
and uh, the bullet travels over the highway.
mm,
So the shooting part is this side. You can see the target. You can't see the highway, but while you're shooting, there's cars and trucks and buses and stuff going up and down. But the range is built in such a fashion that there's no way that the bullet can actually impact. And I mean, we're talking
mm.
about, I mean, it's a small country. And this is the type of respect there is for firearms.
Yeah,
What I always say, and you've probably seen it on in my comments, it's not a gut problem. It's a lack of respect for human life. That's what it
yeah,
is at the end of the day. I mean, look
yeah,
at South Africa, 67 murders a day. I mean, we probably, I don't think the war in Ukraine has generated that much
mm,
in the 100 days that we've had in the first quarter of the year. I mean, if you consider the stats that was released, I mean, the minister's own words, it's the most violent and brutal quarter of the year. And yet at the
yeah.
same time, he's busy actively trying to get rid of disarming
Firearms.
us. Oh.
Just as a shill, Ramon did a video on this around the People's War and Nelson Mandela and communist, origins
Mm,
of the ANC, and it's worthwhile the
mm,
audience if you haven't watched it, go watch it. But there's something he mentions in there about the People's War and the psychological impact it has on people, and taking
mm,
kind of warfare in the streets, and we're still seeing that even today.
mm.
There's been no real kind of progress in South Africa following the People's War,
Yeah. Mm.
but
Yeah, no, I
I
mean
mean,
it's ridiculous.
so this idea to push to have self defense removed, obviously from the statutes, and to disarm people.
Mm,
I'm just going to actually just show an article now on my screen because this article came out today, and I know we were talking about it prior to the
mm,
podcast. So there was an article done in the Citizen which says firearm ownership will make women safer, says expert, and then it says this is a gun-free SA director. A weapon will not be any guarantee of safety. And she goes on to say, and sorry, audience, I'm not paying the Citizen for these articles of just complete trash. But it basically
mm,
says the anti-gun lobbyist, which is obviously, Gun Free South Africa, says the ailing criminal justice system should be repaired before more firearms are put into the hands of civilians. Guns that could be stolen by criminals should be turned over, are often turned onto their own owners. And so we see that kind of idea. It's an idea that we hear quite a lot, that lawful gun owners are the problem because their guns get stolen from
mm.
them and used
Yeah.
against them.
That's the thing that gets pushed, that
Mm,
we're responsible. But where are the guns coming from? Once again, they missed the point that the majority of the guns are coming from the state and from amnesties that are promoted by Gun Free South Africa. I mean, that's where the Prince 2 guns came
mm.
from an amnesty back then, a few
So
years
just
ago.
just to show them this other article, that this actually was drawn reference to in an article September 2021, which is the article's entitled "Guns for Hire: Mapping the Source of South Africans' Deadly Illicit Firearms Trade." And in the actual article, it does actually draw reference to the sources of illegal gun ownership or gun ownership, and they do say that it comes from police issued firearms, military issued
Mm.
firearms,
Yep.
um, the rental business, but their
Mm.
primary source of illegal firearms that they cite in the article is obviously the government. So when we say it's the government who are arming people with illegal firearms, well, that's been shown in a
Mm.
study. And at the same
Mm.
time, they're saying that a lot of these also came from the historical conflict stuff, which is, as you said, the struggle kind of
Yeah.
firearms, and those seem to be the main sources. They themselves
Mm.
say that civilian ownership isn't the main source.
Is the main source. And I mean, okay, we're looking at the historical, we're looking at the SAPs. What's happening currently? I'm sure there's still firearms being smuggled into this country.
Mm.
You're looking at our open border. I mean, if you're looking at your CIT guys, some of them get caught, Zimbabwe's or Swazis, all ex-military. They must be bringing their firearms in.
Mm.
So there's that as well. Current smuggling of firearms into the country. Look at KZN, July. That container of what,
That the hundred
five or
thousand rounds or something that just disappeared.
7 million rounds that disappeared.
Yeah, that's
They
right.
recovered what, 550 rounds, and said, "Yeah, we recovered 550 rounds."
That's right, and they were so pleased with themselves.
Oh, so well done! Well done. You got 550, but where's the remaining?
Millions.
6 million that's out there. So where is that ammunition? I mean, who? I mean, that's another thing. Who knew? I mean, this thing got locked up under police guard.
Yeah.
And I mean, unloading a container, I mean, containers what, 6 by 12? It's a big thing. You don't unload it there. Somebody took the entire container. I mean, it's not like you load it up on your Nissan and you bugger off. So that's a truck that was involved. It was locked up in a secure area, in a bonded area, under custom guard. It's gone. But we recovered 550 rounds, and yeah, good job.
Done, huh?
We've done job done, and now you just hear nothing about it. So there's another example. I mean, none of those looters stole 7 million rounds of ammunition. So, you can't blame them. They stole TVs and washing machines, but you can't blame them.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's interesting though because shortly after the Firearms Amendment Act and all the kind of pushback that they got, there was another article that came out from Jeremy Vernon who weighed in on the bill, saying that having a gun is not a human right. And what was interesting about it is that this is a guy who's a former head detective. He's now being investigated for corruption. Story in South Africa, I suppose.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
he came out, and it turns out that he's now working for gun-free South Africa. So
yeah,
again, you have to look at kind of like the sources of these information, and you have to go, well, they all seem to come from the same place. The messages all being pushed from the same place.
I mean, he's the top. He was the top guy investigating firearms, especially on the Cape Flats. Okay, so he should know better. But if you're getting paid, you're gonna say what
whatever you want.
Whoever's paying you, whoever's paying you, you're gonna say what they want.
Yeah.
What I normally do in terms of GFSA is I tell the guys, ignore them. 12 members. They've got no support base in South Africa, right? So you've got this, what I call a propaganda machine, which is all what GFSA is. They're just a propaganda machine. They pump out information that's supposedly accurate, and it's got all of these studies behind it. But it's not. It's the same playbook over and over. They say the same thing. They're 4 times more likely stat that they were always trotting out each and every time was debunked.
It's the old adage that's 98.6% of statistics are unverifiable and made up.
Unverifiable, exactly.
But it sounds legit.
Look, I mean, to the everyday guy, it sounds fine. I mean, yeah, okay, they say that. So what I always tell our membership is, you know what? Let's stop promoting GFSA articles on our group, in our groups, because they are a propaganda machine. They're there to pump out propaganda. If you don't spread that propaganda, it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, it's just going to get stopped there where it is. Now, our reaction as the pro-firearm community to a GFSA article about how firearms are bad. Gives that article credibility, because the Joe in the States going to think, you know what, maybe they've got a point, because these gun nuts are against it.
Yeah.
So maybe they have a point, and that is how their propaganda works.
Yeah.
They don't need to have 100,000, 200, 300,000 members. They're just a propaganda machine that's pumping out of all of this, and we keep the stuff alive because we are so emotional about firearm rights and what we want to and GFSA and all of that. But without realizing it, we are keeping them alive because we are keeping on spreading their filth. I just call it filth. It's about the nicest word that I can use on camera. So to the undecided, the guy sitting on the fence, the guy not really worried about firearms, because you know what, it doesn't interest him. And you have a pro group coming out and trying to attack GFSA's article and he's going to start to think maybe they've got a point, because these guys are responding to them. So my thing is, stop responding to them.
But
don't let them grow. Don't let them, don't give them traction. Don't give them credibility. I know it's difficult.
It's alarming to see the foreign influence, though, in South Africa. I mean, you're mentioning a lot of the articles that come out. So just to show our audience, there's an article here by Guy Lamb, Gun Control in South Africa, tightening the law by the conversation, which, Propaganda 24 pushed out. But what's interesting is I did a search on this guy, and these are all the articles that he writes, and they all seem to be very anti-firearm. In fact, there's an article here that I just thought, I'd highlight to everybody. And it says, analysis, Guy Lamb, will 2022 be the SAP's watershed year? Yeah, congratulations.
Like they're suddenly going to... Yeah, like they're going to suddenly change around. I mean, these guys are...
So I did a bit of research as to who this guy is, and he seems to have been working on the UN. And I thought it was really interesting because I looked at some of the policy places that he works. So I did a research on that. And the policy place that seems to do a lot of South Africa stuff, he has the conversation. And he has one of his articles, and this seems to be funded by the University of Sydney. I found another place that's drawing reference, the Institute of Security Studies, which was a Jody van de Heide. Foreign name or Afrikaans name, and the article is just the usual trap. But I thought it was interesting to see who funded the article, which is the homicidal Foundation. So I did a research on that. And that seems to be a German party-associated and taxpayer money-funded political research foundation. So, I mean, you can see we've got people sitting here kind of pushing everything and sundry. And, these are people all pushing kind of policies here in South Africa. But a lot of them appear to be, foreign policy. They seem to be foreign players. They seem to be foreign players. They seem to be foreign countries pushing a narrative in our country as if it somehow fits for us.
So there's always that story of follow the money. So if you follow the money, where is it going to lead to? And you've got, as you've mentioned the University of Sydney, Australian. They must have been funded by somebody to fund this. This German party, or whatever they are, funded by somebody to fund this. So if you're looking at following that money trail, you're going to end up probably somebody that starts with a G and ends with a S. It comes back down to Open Source Foundation.
But it's alarming because I mean Australia already had their firearms taken away. Guy Lamb, when I did research on him, he seems to write a lot of stuff in the UK. The UK lost its firearms law in like the 70s following the Dunfar massacre, and like
Mm,
we seem to keep having the same players from the same Western
exactly.
countries that are very kind of anti-gun anyway, and they seem to be funding all of
Mm,
the research in our countries. And you'd think that a continent like Africa that was subjected to forms of colonization and being told by
mm,
European entities what to do, you'd think that our guys would know better than this.
exactly. I don't know. I don't know if you've seen it, but I mean, I was, go scrolling through my timeline, and there were article or a post popped up. And just now today or yesterday, there was another massacre in Nigeria. A Catholic church got
Yeah.
shot up. I think 50 or so people. We were talking about this the other day. I mean, if those people, those citizens, had arms, they would have been able to defend themselves.
Mm.
I mean, look at. I mean, if you're going to come talking about church massacres, we can't exclude our own attempted church massacre here in Cape Town, not too far from where I stay. And we had one guy with a 38 special snubby who actually the fought off the attackers.
Mm.
So one guy made a difference. Yeah,
And there was
yes, there
that
were
brother of
people
the
killed.
cricketer, wasn't there, who shot the guys that
Yes,
came into
and
his
that was
church? Yeah,
that was 2 years ago. It was Joos van der Westhuizen's
that's
brother.
the one. Yeah.
Ex-cop. He was at church, I think not last year, either last year or the year before last, but it was during lockdown when this was, when they could go back to church. One guy defended in that case, nobody got killed. But if you're looking at the St. James Street massacre, people were killed, people were injured. But
Mm.
one guy fought them off because he said what happened was he fired at them and then he went out the back because they retreated out of the church. And Charles was actually a founder member of GOSA, by the way,
Mm.
if nobody knows that. So he ran out the back of the church and came around the corner, and he found them standing in the street, waiting for him to come out the front. So
Yeah.
that's how he expected him to come out the front. And they were obviously armed with AKs and petrol bombs and stuff, and they would have cut him down if he had come out,
Unarmed.
running out the front of the church
Mm.
into an ambush. So he actually outflanked them in a sense, and he came out the back and around the side, and I think he fired at them again, and that's when they got in the car and they just buggered off. So it just shows there that an armed person can look at the Texas church shooting as well, a few years
Mm.
back, a year or two, where the deacon defended the church against a shooter. I mean, that would have just been another example of a mass shooting that as they term it in the States. But once again, one guy with a firearm defended another person, a number of people successfully. And this is what they forget, or they're trying to downplay, especially your the anti-gun lobby,
Mm.
saying that how can a firearm not be successful? There's already 3 instances where, I mean, 2 instances in Africa, one overseas, where and I'm not talking about an armed, neighborhood watch that actually came in, but one guy
Mm.
with his little pistol, 389 mil, and he defended and successfully defended a group of people. So how can it not be effective?
So I think I'm just going to, like, the final article I'll just share with our audience was actually an article written by Forbes, and I think it's one of the best articles on this type of stuff I've
Mm,
seen. But Forbes makes a reference to the right to self-defense does not depend on statistics or numbers, and then they go on to talk about concealed carry, and they do say that actually the
mm,
number of instances where these things are very useful or very very efficient in the normal sense of things, and where they've been successful at helping people, they
mm.
distinctly draw reference to the mere fact that actually having a firearm you was enough to stop the altercation, as opposed to an actual
Sure.
shooting.
Mm. Yeah, look, you don't have to discharge. You're just having it. And the thing is, especially in South Africa, it's not just a matter of walking into the shop, choosing it, and walking out. We have to go through this whole long process of training where you actually learn how to use the firearm itself. You actually learn the laws around firearm ownership and and the regulations. I've just gone through that exercise with my wife now earlier in the beginning of the year. Then you're still going to have to go and apply at the SA Police Services, your local DFO. You need all of these references. You need to get interviewed as a reference. You get fingerprints taken. You get checked if there's your background gets checked if there's you have a criminal record. A process that takes up to, on a good day, 4 months. After which you can go and buy, or you can buy the firearm at any time. But then you've got to go and um, apply for the license. It's another 4 months. So the stuff that we have as firearm owners or prospective firearm owners in South Africa have to go through. That's why we say we are the most law-abiding sector of the community, because you've literally got to be crime. I mean, we've got to jump through all of these hoops to have a legal firearm to defend ourselves against people that don't have to go through all of this stuff. And yet people want to take that away from us.
Okay, so for everybody on here, so where can they find you? And you're welcome to do a shill on selling GOSA, and people should join GOSA.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, man. Yeah, you can find me on Gun Owners South Africa. It's on Facebook. Just type in the Gun Owners South Africa, and then you'll find us there. Join the organization. We've got various membership levels. Look, the organization is donor funded predominantly by its members. We unfortunately don't have the resources that the anti-gun movement has. We would like to have our own George Soros, but unfortunately, it seems that there is nobody willing to do that internationally or nationally. So we are primarily donor funded. So we've got like 4 levels of membership. It doesn't matter whether, if you're on the group, you're a member of GOSA. And then from there, we have a ordinary, gold, and diamond membership packages. Each of these are on different price packages, and each one has a level of membership benefits attached to it. So we'll cover things like appeals, motivations at a cost, follow-ups for your applications that you've submitted or that's outstanding more than 120 days. These are charged at above your annual membership fee. And the guy that does the follow-ups, the last time I spoke to him, I was in April up in Pretoria for the Girls on Fire event. I asked him right now, how many cases have you got? I got 300 cases, open cases that I'm following up. So he's sitting there every day, sending mails, phoning, hanging on. Sometimes he hangs on for 2-3 hours trying to get clarity on people's outstanding applications. But he said at the same time, I got 100 approvals. Look, there's never a guarantee on approval of any application, but we will do our best to do, to follow up on this for you. Look, the money goes that is generated through the membership packages and through the services that is offered is actually goes into fighting for firearm rights. We've got our office staff that are full time. We've got our in-house attorney.
But it's not just firearms licenses you deal with. You also deal with other things like cops pull you over and ask you stupid questions and stuff.
Stupid questions and stuff like that. I mean, defensive gun use. We've got coverage for that from gold and diamond. I think the new packages that came out, there is something for silver. I'm not 100% sure, but if you give me up on the group, I can get that info. If you want, I can even send it to you, and you could maybe put it up on the show if there's time. But we deal with defensive gun uses. We've got a network of attorneys. We don't just have one attorney sitting in Johannesburg and you in Pitso Novata, and we'll make a plan for you to have attorney. We've represented guys at Section 102s. We'll assist with motivations for your licenses, for your your range, your business that you want to, if you are a shooting range and you want firearms, so that for your security company, if you're looking to, get firearms for your security company, we'll assist you with those types of things. And we fight for your rights. So, as I said earlier, beginning of the show, tomorrow, 7th of June, we're heading out to Pretoria. Our team is meeting with the Civilian Secretariat of Police to tell them they don't want to give us the fulfill our PIE request. We're there to tell them, you need to give it if you want any proper input from us. The 8th of June, we're heading out to, I think it's Gauteng High Court for 2 applications. One is a declaratory order to determine what is a license, and then what proof would constitute as proof of a license. This is important with the current situation of license printing. So guys getting approved and they're having to wait 3 to 4 to 5 months to have the license card,
So
which is
their
impacting
card,
on
basically.
the actual card that says, section 13, 15, 16, 4, serial
So
number,
this is the
whatever.
much disputed debate of whether or not a paper license should be sufficient or whether you have to have the card.
Yeah. Now, what we feel or what we're contending is that the license actually exists on the CFR system. So if the license exists on the system, then what is enough proof? Is it a card or is it a paper printout? The Act doesn't define what a license permit or authorization is. So that's what we are going to ask the court for. What is the license? Is it the card or is it what's on the system? And if it is on the system, then
paper should be sufficient. In which case the card becomes useless.
Sufficient. Yeah. So the idea is if they go in our direction, and I must say both the matters are unopposed by SAPS. So if we have a favorable ruling, then the guys can go on approval, get a printout, and go and collect their property at the dealers. Because at this point, the dealers have been threatened by the cops, don't release on a printout. But where does it say they can't? So that's the crux of the whole action. The second action, it might not be, some guys might not feel it's important, but we have a person that was a foreigner, issued a Section 21 permit to possess a firearm, temporary permit to possess a firearm, and they refused to renew it. Okay. So he's in the process, I believe, of getting his permanent residency and such, which means that he can then go ahead and get a license. So they've refused to renew his Section 21 permit. So that's another thing that we're going to be fighting for. So those are this week is quite busy. So the guys, are busy
but that's just a sample of the type of policy cases that you push forward. So
that's the type of thing that we do.
So everybody should join GOSA and help fund you to do the fight.
Exactly. I mean, yes, there's a lot of other organizations, but you know what? I remember a few years back there was an interview that Paul Oxley gave our national chairperson, and at that point we were a new organization that came out. I mean, there were other organizations before us, long-standing organizations, and in the interview we said we've been looked at as the bad boys of the gun community. We demand, we want, right? We want this. This is what we stand firm in our demands. We don't just give in easily. So that is probably one of the reasons that they didn't invite us to the webinar, because they're afraid of us, because we are standing firm, and we don't just back off easily. We don't threaten. We actually follow through. So if we say we're going to take you to court, we're gonna get there. I mean, we had the interdict a few years ago where we stopped them from confiscating guys with expired licenses. I mean, that thing ran for almost 2.5 years until it was appealed. We lost it on appeal at the SCA, which incidentally was a precursor for the mess that we find ourselves in.
Yeah.
Because if I look at the Concord judgment, the Concord judgment is an appeal. Okay, the
Mm.
initial judgment in the High Court was against Fidelity. Fidelity then took it to the SCA, which then ruled in Fidelity's favor, and then SAPS took it to the Concord, who now then affirmed the SCA ruling. The
Mm.
same SCA that said that expired licenses cannot be renewed said in the Fidelity appeal to the High Court judgment that there's nothing in law preventing the person from applying for a new license for the same
Mm.
firearm, which the Concord has affirmed now. So essentially, it's going to probably be a similar type process to amnesty, but we hope that they see the light that there's a problem in SAPS pulling in the firearms, because I mean, it's the last two amnesties have proven that they're incapable of um, of safeguarding the firearms.
Mm.
Simple as that. So the Fidelity order, there's, if you go through it and you read it, you'll find these nice little gems there that we can use for future. So hopefully, and I know in the order also they also mentioned Section 21 permits. So ideally, I mean, if they see reason, they would either issue the applicant a Section 21 permit
Mm.
um, while he applies for his license, which means that it's less likely that that firearm would go missing, because that firearm would then be in the possession of the owner. And a Section 21 permit does exactly that. It's a permit to possess a firearm that you don't have a license in.
Yeah.
So you would then normally, and I know of a few people that actually got Section 21 permits for firearms that they applied for, and their reason was a friend of mine. He applied for a Galil. He got the Section 21 permit based on the reasoning that he was within the next month was going to participate in a national shoot. So it can be done.
Mm.
So I would hope that they see that and actually go ahead with that. But with SAPs,
You can never
anything
guarantee.
goes.
Mm.
There's no guarantee. I mean, they will do the worst, most stupidest thing. I mean, an example was probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago. One of the members came on the group, and he had a problem with buying more than 200 rounds for his Section 13 firearm, and he holds dedicated status.
Mm.
And anyway, at the end of the day, the officer said, yes, but I did say this, I did say that, but um, often speaking to our chairman, this officer, he's obviously our chairman. He's a dealer as well, so he has regular dealings with DFO type persons. And he pointed out to him and said, "Look at that. This is the act. What you going on that you guys have been doing for the last decade is wrong." And this officer realized this, and without us knowing, he actually went and had a sit-down meeting with one of the CFR bigwigs
Mm.
and showed it to him. And he said, "You know what? We've been trained wrong for the last 10 years."
But we
And
recently
then
saw this as well with the Section 13, Section 15,
yes,
16 carrying of
15 and
firearms.
16, yeah,
In
yes, the
fact, I
same
think it
thing.
was Firearms SA even sent out an article on this and really made a real muck up about it, where they were telling
Yeah,
people if you've got a Section 16 not to carry for self-defense. I know
exactly.
GOSA's position was, well, that's rubbish. And then
Mm,
I saw a few days after that, actually, the police did issue a guidance to their own members that
own
basically says,
members, yes.
guys,
Any license.
you can carry it, so please don't
Yeah,
stop all these Section 16 people and try to arrest them, because that's what
yeah,
they were doing.
exactly. So as an example, those are the types of things that we do.
Mm.
I mean, if you're looking at that one you're talking about, the carrying of the Section 16, they actually issued the directive.
Yeah.
So a soft win. We didn't have to spend a lot of money. We didn't have to
Mm.
go to court. We didn't have to fight, but it was a soft win. Hopefully, the 200 round, we're expecting a directive. But once again, it's SAPS. We hope that they just see the light and just issue a directive stating,
Mm.
you know what, if the guy's got dedicated status, he's got no ammo limit on all his firearms because that's what Section 91(2) says. So these are the types of things that we do
But SAPS
for our
must have seen
members.
you with that Section 16 thing. I think you were asking everybody
Probably.
to get you all the information, and you wanted to sue them. So it was a logical thing for them just to go, okay,
Yeah.
well the lawyers are coming
Yeah.
out, just issue a statement.
Just issue the statement. And I mean, if I'm looking at the two court cases coming up on Wednesday, both are unopposed. So it just shows, you know what, it looks like they didn't get any instruction as to what to do. So hopefully it will be made an order of court, which should make it a bit harder to appeal later on. So I'm also very cautious about this unopposed. It sounds nice, you know, but you don't know what they got planned for later down the line.
Government does a lot of things unopposed and then appeals it at a later stage.
Yeah, and appeals them at a later stage. So from my discussion with our in-house attorney, he says we want to have it made an order of court, which would then make it a lot more difficult to appeal it later on. So yeah. So as an example of what we do, that is what we do. I mean, it's there is nobody else doing this type of stuff for gun rights in South Africa. Yes, we have other groups, but they are also primarily focused on their memberships. And I don't have a problem with it. You know, and having all of these groups is good because it's not just one group that can be focused on. I mean, if you're going to look at it, maybe not a good analogy, but you know, if you're looking at in the wild, a pack of hyenas. I mean, you don't get a hyena on his own. He's always in a pack, and he'll go after the lion's prey or whatever's prey. But you have this attacking from different angles. So if you have one person or one group attacking, and it's easier to cut them off, as opposed to having different groups, different interest groups, also, you know, having the input. It's easier to ignore one group or one person, but if you've got 10 or 20 people or 20 groups, you know, saying the exact same thing, it's going to be a bit difficult to go to let's say the PPC and say, yeah, you know what, this is the opposition and we've done what you wanted us to do, and you know, but there's only one, you know, it's only one group opposing, so yeah, we can just bypass them. But now you've got all of these different groupings, and we, to a certain degree, we unified in our approach. Is we are opposed to the bill. Period. That's it. We're not. We want to input. The fact of the matter is that the bill is very bureaucratic, red tape, top heavy. A lot of stuff is open to a very wide interpretation. I mean, suddenly you have this issue of competency 5 and 10 years. I don't know where this comes from. The act is clear.
Suppose
It's
the idea is that they want to keep you going through to get your training. They just want to make it as hard as possible to earn a gun.
as hard as possible. I mean, the act is clear. It's linked to your license validity. The 5-year story. Yes, in 2006, the act was amended, which read that the competency was valid for 5 years. But then the issue came up with that there were competencies that were valid for 10 years because of the license section. So it didn't make sense for you, because you cannot hold a license if you do not have a competency. So if your competency expires after 5 years and you're holding a Section 15 handgun or a Section 16 handgun, for example, then for the next 5, then suddenly that 10-year license is now only valid for 5 years because your competence expired. So that was the rationale behind the amendment to that, to what it reads now. And now suddenly they're coming back to that thing. I can't, you know, so you're having these things that's popping up. And we have also written to them regarding this. So, you know, hopefully we'll get a response on that. As yet, there is no response yet. So yeah, but it's not a sprint. Um, it's a marathon, and it's not something that's going to change immediately overnight. I know people, we get emotional, we get frustrated with this whole process, but we need to stick in there. We need to continue. I mean, support GOSA, support the other organizations that you are a member of, support the other civil organizations that are also tackling this. Guys, please engage your political party that your preferred political party about this issue, because it's not just it's not just about gun rights, it's civil rights.
Mm.
um if one right is taken, then what's going to happen to the next one? It's always a snowballing effect,
Mm.
and we can see where the world is heading to in the last 2 years. It's basically looking at the way it's going is removal of citizens' rights. And those are things that are, and a right is not given to you by anybody. You're born with that right.
Mm.
So nobody's got the right to take it away from you. I mean, we've got a very good constitution. I mean, you have the right to life. Um, you have the right to self-defense. So from our perspective, the right to firearms is an implied right.
Mm.
Ideally, you want it enshrined or entrenched and
Yeah,
written down.
I'd love to have our own Second Amendment. Love
Yes,
it.
that would be ideal. But once again,
So
I mean,
DA, if you're watching, like, you know,
yes,
maybe make it an
yeah,
express pledge. Huh?
yeah. I mean, if you're looking at political parties, yes, the DA has opposed the bill.
Mm.
I'm not, I'm just mentioning the ones who have. The DA has opposed the bill. The city of Cape Town itself has put in a submission against the bill.
Mm.
The Freedom Front Plus also opposes the bill. The ACDP also opposes the bill. They've actually, I think there's a YouTube clip where they actually comes out in Parliament. We're opposing this bill. So there's at
Yeah.
least three political parties. Um, I'm not sure about the others. I think Action SA is also in opposition to the bill. So there is support out
And
there.
if you and to everybody on the audience, if you get a chance to ask your politician, ask him. Any
Yes,
politician that doesn't trust its constituents with firearms probably doesn't deserve your vote. And
exactly.
EFF, if you're watching, just remember that the Nazis were the first one to implement gun control, and the gun control they implemented was to curb the communists. They didn't want communists to be armed, and the EFF loves to think of itself as communist, so maybe they should oppose the
Yeah.
bill too.
And the funny part of that is that although the parties have that's their policy, their members are most likely civilian firearm owners, whether it's for self-defense or sport or hunting,
Mm.
because the GOSAs has a policy of we're non-political, we're non-religious. It doesn't matter what your political or religious or sexual orientation is. It's all about firearms rights. So we have ANC members that are members and are firearm owners, or in
Mm.
the process of becoming firearm owners. We have EFF members. We have members across the entire political spectrum, South Africa. So I don't know. I cannot understand why they would want to take away this from their own people, from their own members. It just boggles the mind. And
Foreign policy, mate.
considering,
I think we already covered that
well,
one.
yeah,
Foreign
yeah.
policy.
But I mean,
Foreigners having an impact on South Africa. White
and
monopolies
that's wrong.
capital.
Yeah, the colonialism coming back.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's bizarre. I mean, 67 murders a day, and they want to tell you that a firearm won't be effective. I mean, you've got how many rapes in the last quarter now? How many rapes?
Mm.
898 women murdered. Would having a firearm have made a difference? Yes, it would have made a difference, because their life would have been saved. Because that
Absolutely.
guy that killed him probably went on to kill a few other people. There would have been more lives saved if one of those murdered women had been able to defend her or, herself effectively. I mean, there was an incident that I remember of a report probably a year or two ago. This girl, she got attacked, and she shot the guy. She shot the guy with his own firearm because he left the firearm lying on the side while he attempted to rape her. So she grabbed the firearm and she shot him. So there was a rape averted. Okay, I understand the lady is probably suffering some trauma.
Hey. Gun-free South Africa
Yeah,
would tell you that that was a bad thing because that's an example
yeah,
of a man whose own firearm was turned against him. So,
yeah. You see, that is how I mean, they turned that bloody story around themselves. I mean, but I mean, that's just an example of somebody successfully defending herself.
mm,
Um, yeah, I don't know. It's sometimes very hard to answer these questions: why and who and what. I mean, it just
mm,
boggles the mind.
I agree.
Um, it really just boggles the mind.
Well, I'm gonna call it an end there. I'm gonna thank you for joining
Yeah.
me. It's been a great conversation. I hope the audience gets some benefit out of it. And obviously, the upshot of the conversation is if you don't have a gun, buy one. If you're not a member of
Yes.
GOSA, join GOSA
Join
and
also.
get involved. Speak to your
Yeah.
politicians and make sure that we can keep our gun rights in
Mm.
South Africa. We're one of the few
Yeah.
countries that are still privileged enough to have them. There is an
Mm.
international campaign to take self defense away from people. So speak up and play your part. Don't be scared of the opposition, and be skeptical of what you read and what you see out there. I think we show
Mm.
pretty convincingly that it's all the same people pushing the same rubbish.
Yep. That's true.
Well,
Thanks
thanks
very
very
much
much.
for having me on. Yeah. Thanks very much for
Anytime.
having me on.
Cool.
Okay. Cool.
Take it easy,
Cheers.
everyone. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.